So let's begin by reviewing the model of generative grammar that we have been developing so far. That model is often referred to as this principles and parameters, or P&P approach. Now, central to the principles and parameters approach is this idea that there are 4 levels of representation. So 4 levels of representation. Right, so we have this level first of D structure, which is then operated upon somehow to yield an S structure. And finally, this S structure yields, on the one hand, phonological form, PF, phonological form, and on the other hand, a logical form, or LF, logical form. So let's look at a derivation in order to see how these levels enter into our theory. So consider the passive example. The puppy was kissed. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that in order for our derivation to get off the ground, we have to have this level of the lexicon, right, which inputs into this level of D structure in order to generate essentially a representation corresponding to where thematic relations are assigned. So how does that work? Well, let's draw out the deep structure for this. We have our tense phrase, which goes down to our first verb phrase, V bar, V, in this case was, and our second verb phrase, V bar, V, kissed. And here we have our thematic object, the determiner phrase, the puppy. And so we know that the determiner phrase, the puppy, is base generated as a complement to the verb kissed, because this is where the thematic role of theme is assigned. Should also indicate here that our tense is null, passive. Okay, so that's D structure. Of course, this is not what's pronounced. In order to get to a representation which can then provide phonological form, we of course have to undergo a series of transformations. So transformations. Transformations. And in the present case, there are 2 of them. First, we have our V to T movement, right? Was moves up to T in order to fill or fulfill the requirement that the tense node be phonologically realized, and in so doing it leaves a trace. Let's put a little T there. And second, we have a case DP movement, right? Our DP, the puppy, has to move to the specifier of TP in order to be assigned nominative case, right? This is where nominative case is assigned. Just put plus nom there. And again, this leaves a trace. So this new structure where was is in the position of the tense node and the thematic object is in the position of the specifier of TP is our position of S structure, right? So that is our second level of representation. And importantly, at this level of representation, these traces exist where the moved element is moving from. Okay, so this is one D structure, pre-movement, And our second level is S structure, post-movement, post-movement. And now the derivation is not quite over because we still have to do the fundamental thing that language does, right? Its basic property. We have to show how language is able to relate sound and meaning. And so that's what S structure does. It mediates between phonological form, or phonological form is basically a representation that's sent out to the phonological system in order for perception and articulatory purposes. And on the other hand, of course, it must output something that gets an interpretation at the conceptual interface, the system responsible for assigning meaning to a particular sentence. So, to recap, in principles and parameters, we've got these 4 levels of representation, each with its own peculiar properties, in order to answer the question of how language is able to generate an unbounded array of possible sentences, each of which a correspondence between sound and meaning.